Good day, everyone. Neophyte DAG bringing you another message. And in this message, we're going to continue with the series of unveiling a lot of deception, a lot of lies that were told to you, the house of Israel, about your identity. And in this message, it's called King Charles I. King James, we all know who King James is, King James VI and first, Queen Anne, that's King James' wife, and Queen Henrietta, that's King Charles' wife, of Scotland, England, Ireland, France, Wales, Denmark, Norway, were all black. Let's get into this message. As always, this message covers Job 9 verse 24, which warns us that the wicked, the Gentiles, the Caucasians, the whites in our modern day interpretation of that, will disguise, paint over, wipe out the faces of our rulers, leaders, and righteous people. So that's what this is telling us. They're going to cover the face. So you won't know that the people that are being given to you as the face of the Gentile, the Caucasian, and some of them, not all of them, belong in the category of the wicked, has painted it over and given you a false image. So that's what Job 9 verse 24 is telling you. We'll also look at, as part of this series, the testament of Asha, which warns us that these things are going to happen to us. We ourselves, the house of Israel, were disobedient to the Most High and loathed the Lord, and for that we were scattered among all nations. So it was warned in verse 6 that we'll get scattered, and you shall not know your land, which is where you're from, what country you're from, what tribe you belong to, what language you spoke. Because many of us think we're all from Africa, which is not the case. Some of us are from Africa, but most of us were in Europe. A lot of us were already in the Americas. But in the end, this information will come back to you. You will be gathered by your faith, your belief in the Most High and the Lord Thoth, and you'll be brought back into the knowledge of who you are. And that's what we're experiencing right now. King Charles, who is King Charles I, he's King of England, Scotland, France, Wales, during the years 1625 to 1649. He is the son of King James I of England, the sixth of Scotland. There are a few facts about King Charles I. His last name is Stewart, and he's of the Stuart clan. He lived in Scotland. He was born in Scotland, and then he became King of England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and he moved over to England. He founded and established what is now the states of Massachusetts and Maryland in the United States. He founded those states during the colonial time when they were being ruled by the King of England. He was the King of England at that time. He gave the charters to form those two states. He founded and established in the Caribbean Barbados, Montserrat, Antigua, St. Kitts, and Bahamas. He's the one who founded them and established them. He gave the charter as well for the English colonies to be set up on those islands, the first English colonies. The U.S. state North Carolina and South Carolina was named after him. Charles in Latin is Carolus, North Carolina, South Carolina. King Charles, here's the tragic part of it now. He was dethroned, removed from the throne of England and beheaded. His head was chopped off by Oliver Cromwell. His father, as we had covered, is King James I of Ireland, England, Scotland, France, and Wales, was black. We already covered that in another message, but we'll repeat it here. His mother, Queen Anne of Denmark and Norway, she was also black. We covered that in another message. And his wife, Queen Henrietta Marie of France, was also black. So we'll get into this. The Stewart family, they're originally from Scotland. And you look at the Scotland map by clan name and you'll see Stewart all over it. You'll also see other names. All these names are names of black people that occupied the entire Scottish Isle and island during that time. They were all moved out and they're now in the Caribbean. They're now in the US, but they were in Scotland at that time. These are their names. So if you look in any phone book, any list of names, you'll see this name scattered all over the US and the Caribbean. They were originally of Scottish ancestry. But this is where King James Stuart, King Charles Stuart, came from. This is King Charles' father, King James the Sixth and First Stuart. That's their last name. This is what he looks like. That's a portrait of him that's currently in the National Portrait Gallery of the UK. It's a black person. You look at the person, it's unmistakably, he's a dark skinned, a black man. But I want to make you know the image so when you see it, you can recognize it versus all the pale skin, fair skin images that are being thrown around on the internet of King James. This is another image of King James, which King James had put in his book. This is a book of King James, the works of the Most High and Mighty Prince James, by the grace of God, King of Great Britain, France, Ireland, and defender of the faith. King James had published his own book. He put an image of himself in that book. This is an image of a black person, unmistakable. This is King James and what he looked like. This is a book that will cover, that talks about all the Stuart. This is a general description of all the Stuarts. It's written by ALLAN MASSIE. It's called The Royal Stuarts. And on page 114, it says, it's describing a person. He looked like a Stuart king. And what a Stuart king looked like, tall and dark. Dark skin complexion person. That's what a Stuart king is. So this will settle all dispute on every Stuart line of king, that they had to be dark and they had to have this feature of a Stuart king. King Charles' mother, Queen Anne of Denmark, will go to this book. It's called Anne of Denmark by Ethel Carlton Williams. And on page 21, it says Anne, with her ivory complexion, and at first glance you'll say, wow, ivory, that means white. That's the way it's been told to me. No, ivory is also black. If you go to the Webster Dictionary, you look at the bottom of the right-hand portion of your screen, ivory black, fine kind of soft blackening. So ivory is black, but they put ivory complexion to throw you off. This is a portrait of Queen Anne of Denmark. And as you look, you can see the portrait is of a black woman. It's also in the National Portrait Gallery of the United Kingdom. So this is known. It's nothing new that I'm telling you. But the painted over images are thrown at you to deceive your eyes unless you go into the books and study to show yourself approved to know truth. But that's Queen Anne of Denmark. We'll go to King Charles now and prove who he is. His mother is black, his father is black. So obviously, without a doubt, he's black. But I want to prove it to you now in writing. So when you see these strange images of King Charles I being Caucasian, being of a pale and fair skin complexion, you know it's utter lie. So we'll look at a book called The Royal Passion, the turbulent marriage of King Charles I of England and Henrietta Maria of France. It's written by Katie Whitaker. On 204, it talks about King Charles as a boy. The boy was what people hoped, another black prince. That's Prince Charles when he was young at the time. He wasn't king as yet. So the people were hoping they would have another black prince. His father was black, so they're hoping the son, who is black, is going to be now a valiant black prince. We'll go to another book, Commentary of the Life and the Reign of Charles I, and this is written by Isaac d'Israel. We'll look at page 417, and it talks about Charles I was of a middle stature, his complexion brown. So again, it verifies that he's a black person. In our modern day, a brown-skinned person is a black person. They're all lumped into one. Go to another book, King Charles I, a study by Walter Phelps Dodge. And in this book, on page 28, it talks about King Charles I. Charles, dark coloring, his dark coloring. It's not his hair, telling you his hair is of chestnut, and his dark coloring is talking about his skin complexion. Unmistakably, King Charles I was a dark-skinned person, which in our modern day time was a black person. We'll look at another book talking about King Charles I, and this is the book by the name of King Charles I by Pansy Pakenham. And on page 142 of this book, it's talking now about a rhyme, a poem that was written by one of King Charles' close friend after King Charles was killed by Oliver Cromwell. This friend, Harrington, was reminiscent of King Charles I, so he wrote a poem which expressed a rhyme. As I was going by Charing Cross, I saw a black rider on a black horse. They told me it was King Charles I. A black rider, King Charles. So in every indication, the people, his friends, are indicating that he's black. And in the books, it's written that he's of dark skin complexion. King Charles was black. He has no other color to be. His mother was black. His father was black. So King Charles I is obviously going to be black. Which brings us to his wife, Queen Henrietta Marie of France. We'll go to a book called The Royal Martyr by Charles Willier Coit. And on page 43 of that book, Princess Henrietta Maria, the princess who had been born in 1609, was then in her 14th year, dark of complexion. So Henrietta Maria was dark. We'll go to another book, Trial of King Charles I by J.G. Muddiman. We'll read from page 8 of this book. Howell, when he had seen the queen, he wrote this of her lovely and lasting complexion, a dark brown. Just telling you her complexion is dark brown. Unmistakably, Queen Henrietta Maria of France was dark skinned in what we call in our modern day a black woman. Which brings us to this conclusion. King Charles I of England, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales was unmistakably a black man. King James's father was a black man. We've covered that. Queen Anne's mother was a black woman. We've covered that in previous message. His wife, Queen Consort, Henrietta Marie of France, was black. Yes, there were black people in France. And she came from a king and queen line of France. So the king of France at that time was also black. Spoiler alert that I want to bring forth at this particular point in time. The person who ordered the dethroning of King Charles I and the execution of King Charles I, Oliver Cromwell, was a black man. He was also black. We'll cover that in a later message. Which brings us back to Testament of Asha 7. You shall not know who you are, what land you're from, and what language you spoke. But now it's going to come back to you when the time of Aquarius starts. You shall know and be gathered back into the knowledge of self, back into the knowledge of your connection to the Lord Thoth and to the Most High, Allah. Through the covenant, the agreement that was made by the Lord Thoth and by Allah with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that their seed shall inherit the earth at this time. And who are the seeds of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? The dark-skinned people, the black people in our modern day time. Man, woman, know thyself, know who you are, and stand strong, be strong, and stay strong.